Welcome to the Town of Concord Personnel Board meeting of Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. And we're starting about 5:22 in the evening. So I think maybe because we have a mixture of both Zoom, actually everything's Zoom. So we need to go do the call to order and have the people indicate their presence. So calling me to order, Pamela Talbot.
Here.
Joe Emmerich.
Here.
Elizabeth Cobbs.
Here.
Kate Ryan. You're muted, Kate.
Here, sorry about that. Here.
That's right. Then Bill Moranchik. Yes. Bill Moranchik. All right, we're going to start with the, which is actually the central agenda item, which is discussion of the personnel bylaw. And I want to thank Kimberly a lot for thanking the board members for contributing to their thoughts, comments, but then also for Kimberly to gather all of these comments and then to put them into I guess it's version D for us to look at and to talk about tonight. So does anyone have a thought on what they would like, how they would like to proceed tonight? I mean, what the options are is that we go through the document and we talk about and make certain that the revisions which have been so noted make sense and that we as the personnel board are all in agreement. That's one approach. The other approach is for each of us to indicate our comments. But I think maybe I'm going to go with the former, which is let's walk through the document. You have in front of you the version that Kimberly has prepared, that you can see who made the particular comment. So let's go through that. The first comment really comes up at the second paragraph. And Kate, you want to just tell us about your thoughts on why you made that comment?
Yeah, sorry, I'm back now. Hold on just a second. Let me grab my my documents. They're in my bag.
So I think we're all in the same boat, maybe Bill, you in the car as well. I tried to go home across town, which is about an 8-minute trip. 20 minutes later, I boarded and went back to this office I'm using. And I think it's nutty. I tried 2 different ways to get across town and it didn't work. It was impossible.
Was it just traffic or was there an incident?
No, it's traffic, just simple traffic.
Wow.
So I'm sure Kate and Bill, you face the same thing. So.
Well, I like to drive in the breakdown lane so that I can avoid a lot of kidding. Okay, so Kate, are you?
Yeah, I'm here now. Sorry. Sorry, my background is showing my son and I can't figure out how to turn it off on my phone. So let's see. So members shall assign a clerk I think the last time we discussed this, we had talked about not putting the specifics about how the clerk is, the rotating basis, that we would just assign a clerk. Because I think that's how bylaws were.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Any other thoughts? I mean, I think that makes good sense. I think we can, unless Liz or Joe, you have any thoughts on that, I think we can move on to the next, which Kate, you and I made notation of the fact that we should change from Massachusetts state to the Commonwealth. So I think that one's sort of a no-brainer. That's
a good catch.
The Commonwealth and not the Massachusetts state of. Then we go to the next one, which is in the section 2, duties and responsibilities. And I guess let's see. This was, I wondered if there was maybe a better word than equitable. I mean, I
Yeah, it's
know what
kind of weird in
equitable
that
means,
context.
but I went into the thesaurus and I couldn't, I should have copied it out, but I don't, does anyone else have a feeling about, Pamela, you contributed, anyone else have a feeling about the use of that word equitable and
I think
finding
it's
a
thrown around so
synonym?
much that it's kind of lost its meaning. And I don't think it's appropriate under duties and responsibilities.
So, I'll just chime in, that word actually came from the existing bylaw.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that
Hmm.
language, the establishing and maintaining an equitable and efficient system of personnel administration for town employees, that's in our existing bylaw, so that's where I got that language.
Okay. Now,
Well,
though, it
yeah,
sounds like it's like a DEI mandate, which is, DEI is great, but it's, DEI is not kind of a direct component of, managing a personnel administration.
see, my thought on this, it was that we could just delete the word equitable. Because I don't really know how equitable, how you define that in the context of this sentence.
I
And-
agree.
And it just eliminating that word maintains the integrity of the thought, which is an
Mhm.
efficient system. So does anyone, we got Joe, Liz, and Kate how you feel about that word equitable? Are you comfortable in deleting it or not? Is there a synonym?
I don't have a better word, and I would support removing it. For the context of this section of the bylaw. I don't know really.
Okay,
Any objection to it? I think that's fine.
Same.
Liz? All right, so we'll move on. We'll
Okay.
delete the word equitable in that sentence. Then we go to, this is C, and then Kate, you had a comment regarding, little c.
So, I mean, my recommendation is to just make it clear language. Bylaws and legislation are usually written with shall or may, and is responsible is a little. wishy-washy to me,
I
but
agree. I agree. I'm surprised I didn't catch that too.
I think I changed shalls and may, responsible. I tried to include shalls and mays and various, so.
All right, anyone have an objection to the modifications that have been made in C there?
No.
All right, so I'm gonna go on to the next one, which is, Kate. You again had a comment regarding
I agree with
the
Kate.
little 3 and little 4.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same thing. I made it may provide recommendations, rather than shall or should. Again, it was just clarifying language. I mean, we can have a conversation about whether, because may is, we can do it, but shall is we must do it.
You
So we can,
you always want may if you have a choice.
well, it
Yeah.
depends on what you're trying to get at with the language, so.
I'm a may person.
I think that's the lawyer in you, Pamela.
Yeah, I hate to be boxed in.
Yeah. I think that's fine. I think the or, was, as you guys remember, I had to rewrite this whole thing. So every word,
Oh, God.
when we had our meeting last week, because of different issues with how we had it in a document. So that there are little typos like or instead of and. Apologies, but thanks for catching those. What I'm doing for tonight is I have a side-by-side document and I'm just noting what we agree with, so that I can capture it and get it back out to us as well.
Thank you.
So
I
may
think,
provide,
okay, sorry. Did you
should we
capture what you
continue
needed?
with 3 there, Bill? May provide recommendations for revisions? Anybody have a problem with that?
Now that it's a little bit awkward now that you mention it. But then again, you know, it's actually, it's not that awkward.
So may provide recommendations.
I would say maybe
How
regarding,
about to the personnel board with revisions regarding the plan?
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
yeah.
okay,
Same here.
I agree.
Okay. Captured it.
All right, so let's move on to D. Pamela,
That's
you had
B.
several points.
Yeah, I was a high school English teacher before I went to law school. The personnel board, I would actually just say shall consult. I'll even revise my revision. I would just say the personnel board shall consult with the town manager as opposed to shall provide consultation recommendations. Shall consult with the town manager or the designee regarding any revisions and or updates to existing non-wage provisions, period. The personnel board shall provide advice and recommendations. And I did put the shall there to Kate's earlier point that that's kind of the lingua franca in the law. Shall provide advice and recommendations to, now this gets awkward here. So I wasn't careful here. The personnel board shall provide advice and recommendations to. I have to-
Update.
Yeah, shall. How about the personnel board shall recommend updates to the personnel policies and procedures on non-wage provisions, including blah, blah, blah.
Sorry, could you say that again, Pamela?
Blah, blah, blah. You didn't get that? The personnel board shall update the personnel policies and procedures regarding non-wage provisions, including but not limited to the following, blah, blah, blah. It's just a lot less words.
Yeah.
Are we, my question there is, are we making the changes or are we providing advice and recommendations to the town manager and HR manager to make those changes? I think that's the
Good
intent
point.
of that.
Right, good point. So maybe change it back to, the personnel board shall recommend instead of shall recommend updates. Yeah. Shall recommend advice and updates to the personnel policies and procedures.
We keep advice in it.
No, I don't think so. I don't think we need it.
So the personnel board shall recommend updates on personnel
mean,
policies.
Or shall
I,
advise and recommend, shall, instead of provide advice, maybe shall advise and recommend, you know, appropriate updates to the personnel policies and procedures. How's that?
I actually support leaving advise and recommend because I think the intent when we spoke about this section before was that, you know, we're all HR professionals or we have a lot of experience that we can bring and provide advice on these types of provisions and in other areas of the HR, you know, other sectors.
Instead of then shall
I
provide
thought our
advice and
draft that
recommendation,
was written there was
could it
pretty
be
clear.
shall advise and recommend?
Sorry, Joe had a comment there, Pamela. Hold on.
I'm sorry,
Sorry,
and I was just gonna, I mean, I don't go with the group here if we think it needs more clarity, but the way that it was written. The way that it was written, I thought was clear to me anyway, as far as
Okay,
what you had here, but if the group thinks there's a better way to write it, I go for it. But this makes sense to me, the way that it's redrafted. I would support leaving it as the redraft is written, but others agree with it.
I'd actually support that as well.
just to redline my red lines, that's fine.
Well, no, I mean, the revision is the personnel board shall provide advice and recommendations to update current personnel policies and procedures on non-wage provisions.
Perfect.
including But not limited to the following, and then the list of items.
Just by
Yeah,
way of
I
kind
like
of
that.
eliminating words we don't need, how about the personnel board shall advise and recommend, blah, 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 blah. Instead of
I'm
providing
good with that.
and providing recommendations. Get rid of the gerundive. Is that what that is? Shall
Sure.
advise and recommend. Okay, good. Then it's more imperative too.
And let me just gonna interrupt just here. We've got Mark. I'd like to make a comment.
Sorry, yeah, it just struck me that the word current is kind of redundant and unnecessary in that sentence as well.
Agreed.
A good point.
Oh, right. Okay.
All right, I'm trying to catch up with everyone. So what I have in I'm not sure I have it all, but all right, so starting at D, right? We have that first sentence, and I think I got it. The personnel board, oh, what did we say? Shall consult? I have what? Shall consult. Okay, sorry. I did not keep up with you guys. Shall consult with the town manager or their designee. And then the rest of it is as it is, right? Regarding any taking out responsibilities, but regarding any revisions and or updates to existing non-wage provisions, period.
Period.
Okay.
Correct.
And then the
The
next one,
personnel board shall advise and
Right.
recommend
right.
updates. Is that what we have?
Yes.
To personnel policies and provisions, appropriate. Oh, no. Then I went back. So, policies and provisions
Procedures.
as appropriate. What's next?
Personnel policies and procedures on non-wage provisions.
Yeah. You don't need the as appropriate. I throw that in. It's a reflex. So that's a lawyer reflex. It's a throwaway word.
Okay, got it. All right.
Including but
Thrown
not,
away.
including but not limited to the following, blah, 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 blah.
Got it.
Okay.
So, actually, Liz, what's going to happen? The penalty is going to be, since you weren't able to keep up, you're going to have to do minutes in January now.
Bill wants to
Just
get himself off the rotation.
kidding.
I just want to
Just
tell you the
kidding.
ulterior motive there.
So
Okay, I think I got it.
what I think is really important is that very last sentence about town meeting will not be required.
Yeah, I
To
suggested
respond.
that, right.
Now, the reason why I think that's important, and I wrote down there, what about, incentive plans, or I was trying to think of other examples that might come up that are outside those 9 or 10 sections, 10 items. What I don't
Bill,
want
just
to
so
have happen.
clear, wasn't suggesting that be deleted. I said on my comment that I think
No.
it should just be a separate sentence.
No, but I'm concerned about the fact that we say town meeting will not be required
Oh, I see.
to approve. And what happens if there's some other types of in the examples that we don't intend for town meeting to have to approve? How can we try to eliminate any ambiguity associated with the intention of the personnel board through the new personnel bylaw that we don't want to have? It's not necessary to take it to town meeting. And right now, if we can't fit, and maybe those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, maybe that covers everything. But I think we have to try to ensure.
You want to leave some wiggle
that
room
we're
in
not-
there.
Yeah, we're
Well,
not leaving ourselves
How about
open.
saying unless recommended by the town manager, town meeting will not be blah, blah, blah. Then gives you a escape hatch.
Is it town manager or select board?
Well, so
Both.
can I ask, personnel policies and procedures have never gone to town meeting for approval.
Okay.
Those fall
Right.
fully within the authority of the town manager and their designee to create and then bring to the personnel board. Am I correct in that? So
I think, Kate, isn't it true though that what we're doing here is we're taking this out of the bylaw and they were in the bylaw before? And that's why we got nervous and said, doesn't have to come to town meeting. Is that right?
Well, I mean, there were a handful that don't have personnel policies and procedures that were in the bylaw that didn't have corresponding policies and procedures that I saw. These aren't necessarily all, in fact, sick, and I would recommend sick leave, holiday, vacation, bereavement, military, and jury duty are actually wage provisions because
And that's
they're
the law. Yeah.
there's pay involved, and so those should be removed from this section altogether. And there
That's
are
real-
corresponding policies for those sections. And I don't remember
Aha.
why those are in there, but
That's just such
Well,
a
how
good
about,
point.
I agree, and I think therefore, Kate, there's more work on this list of 10. What I think we'd probably have to do, because this bylaw does go to the article for the warrant, is that the presenter explain this difference. Right, because that's where, I mean, that's what we're doing with the town meeting piece, is we're saying, we're not gonna do this the same as always, and here's the changes, so we want you aware as a town that these are no longer coming before you. And I think we have to say that, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's in here, it just means it's explained as the presentation. Does that,
Right.
and
You
that,
could
that
also
helps you get
say-
to your,
You could also say consistent with state law, town meeting will not be required, because, Kate's point, there's so much law on vacation, sick, holiday, bereavement, not bereavement, but military and jury duty. The select board can vote to do whatever they want with that, but it won't be binding at all because there's state law on it.
What I'm trying to avoid is the situation we had with the Indigenous holiday, which was required by the Commonwealth. And in order for that to become a matter of acceptance, or that the town of Concord said, yes, we're having an Indigenous, we had to take that to town meeting.
I see.
That is a situation that I think we have to be conscious of in any other area
A good
where something
point.
might arise, that we don't want to have another situation where Indigenous or X holiday, some other holiday,
All right.
has to go for town meeting.
How
Mark, you've
about
got your
this?
hand
How about, excuse me, just
Let-
before I forget this one thought, how about unless requested by the town manager, comma, of the select board, and consistent with state law, comma, town meeting will not be needed for the following, blah, blah, blah. That gives you big fat cushion. It gives you an escape hatch and a cushion.
like it.
Mark,
Yeah,
Then we
the
don't have
comment,
to, then we
let
don't
me
have
the
to,
get
comment
Mark
I-
in here and then we can come back.
yeah, the comment I would offer was, I believe that those holidays, the actual list of holidays used to be in the old bylaw. And of course, the motion under this article is going to be replace the old bylaw in its entirety with this new bylaw in its entirety. So at some level, you are okay going the route that Liz was talking about, which is if you leave something out altogether and just explain that one of the changes is the list of holidays has been removed from the bylaw and will now be
Okay.
passed by the town manager and the personnel board making a decision and passing it, you're okay, because this bylaw is going to replace the old one in its entirety. Now, I'm making that comment, but I'm also going to say, please check me on that, but I believe that's the reason.
Mhm.
Well, I'm wondering, actually, looking at this now, if we don't need to put in this list at all. We can just say policies and procedures on non-wage provisions, period, remove everything below that.
Love
because
that, love that.
It's not, I don't
Love
think. we need-
But we do
Yeah.
need that sentence about,
Okay.
no, do we? Unless requested by the town manager of the select board and in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Where would that have gone, or does that gone now?
It was just a cushion, but I don't know in light of Kate's last remark if we even need that. But if we do, if there is a consensus to keep something in there, give yourself an escape hatch. Unless recommended by the select board and consistent with state law, blah, blah, blah.
One of the realities here, in my opinion, is that we need, am I on?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so one of the realities, in my opinion, is that,
I'll put it
and
on
this
mute.
is that we have to be able to be clear to articulate what it is that we're trying to accomplish at town meeting by virtue of this whole personnel bylaw change. And maybe that's the place where that's all we have to do. And therefore we don't need to have all of those particular items. But I'm just a little uncomfortable, I guess, that we may be called to task because we didn't make it clear as to what goes to town meeting and what does not go to town meeting.
Yeah, that's a reasonable point, Bill. So one thing on the table is, do we explain once at town meeting that these are the things we are no longer doing? Or do we keep that kind of in the living document so it's always a reminder, we're not bringing this to town meeting? And
think
which
with-
is required?
I think with any kind of law, including a bylaw, you don't want reliance on it to be dependent upon explanation at a meeting. It should either be in or out.
Okay, so in that case, so Joe, I'd love to hear your opinion on this too, because you're dealing with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts law regularly. Is this something that is familiar to you in this kind of situation? Or is it
So,
more Kate's area?
and Kate can speak too, but unless it's a requirement by the state or the federal government that we adopt a holiday, we can pick our own holidays. So,
Hmm.
you know, the town technically has the opportunity, I believe, to designate which holidays is most relevant for their employee population. And they can choose whether or not they observe state or federal holidays. That's my understanding.
Yeah,
I don't think any town can opt out of a state or federal holiday. That's
so
my-
it depends, well, it
Usually
depends
the
on,
higher up it goes, the more, but
Right.
like I even know if we have collective bargaining agreements
Mhm.
with our union employees where if we attempted to,
Mhm.
you know, negotiate out of a holiday that was a federal holiday or a state holiday. For any other federal or state.
All right, we've had some discussion back and forth. I guess I'm not totally clear that we have a consensus. I guess what we're dealing with is whether or not, well, one issue is whether or not we feel we need to have a list of items that will not go to town meeting, which is currently what we've done at this point in the draft. But we've had discussion on perhaps maybe we don't need to have such a list. So it's not clear to me that we have a consensus. And Mark, can you please join in? Got your hand
Yeah,
up.
so I just, one other new thought is that this could be viewed as a list of things that the personnel board and the town manager are expected to collaborate over before establishing, as opposed to, so if it's not in the bylaw at all, then sort of de facto, the expectation is that possibly the town manager has the authority to just establish. So one purpose of putting it in the bylaw could be to establish the expectation that while it's not going to town meeting, there is going to be some level of review and approval of changes to the holiday schedule, for example, between the personnel board and the town manager. So we could think about it as regulating that relationship as well, even as we're taking it out of the bylaw for the efficiency of not having the problem of needing to wait possibly 15 months or longer to adopt a new holiday.
Right, I agree with everything that you said. Any other comments?
I just have one comment on Mark's comment is I understand your point and it's valid, but do we need something in the bylaw to explicate that? If the town manager wants to create a new holiday, couldn't they just come to the personnel board and we could give a recommendation and then bring it to town meeting? And we don't have to have our fingerprints all over it. We could just advise and consult and recommend.
Yeah, so the thinking is that we want to not have to bring it to town meeting.
Right.
But we may want the situation that, suppose, this is unlikely, but suppose for some reason there's a push by citizens to, recognize a new holiday and the town manager doesn't want to recognize it, or the reverse situation, the town manager wants to give a new holiday and the citizens feel like they don't want to pay for a holiday or something like that. There's at least a place where that sort of decision is going to be made collaboratively, as opposed to establishing a situation where a holiday can just be declared by the town manager. I think we're all agreed that getting town meeting out of the middle of that is a good idea. But the question is, what replaces that?
Well, I agree with
Well,
Kat that it shouldn't be in there at all.
I think the point that Mark is making, we have to make certain. I mean, I agree with, we need to make certain that there is some review by the personnel board in conjunction with the town manager, and essentially both need to concur, so that there's not this unilateral ability for the town manager to just simply do what he or she feels that he or she wants to do. So Joe, do you, or Kate, I don't know if my point was succinct enough, but again, I'm thinking we need to take what Mark is suggesting and make certain that both the town manager and the personnel board are in concert with any changes that would take place regarding the items that we've mentioned in this list.
Okay, so I just have one clarification, and Kate, you were getting us there. So first of all, I think we're all on the same page. I think that this is really helpful. We're dealing a little bit with legacy and assumed expectations from town meeting attendees, right? In what gets in here. And I think, so I'll bring us back to one thing and then ask my question of you, Kate. What I'd written down as our revision here was the personnel board shall consult with the town manager, et cetera, not toward non-wage provisions. That's the first sentence in D. And the second was the personnel board shall advise and recommend updates to personnel policies and provisions for non-wage non-wage employees. Is that right?
No, it's personal policies and procedures on non-wage provisions, I think.
Procedures on non-wage provisions. Thank you. Too many P's for me. And okay, so I think that actually does cover the list, but the tension is it used to be in there for the town meeting. So how do we now? What we've talked about, Bill, at your recommendation, which I liked very much, is that those personnel policies and procedures on non-wage provisions are going to be in the handbook, right? A comprehensive look at those provisions and so forth. So they will be identified somewhere. And so I'm inclined toward not having a list, but Kate, you had also mentioned that some things on this list are categorically not to be on the list and some maybe. Could you articulate those differences again?
Sort of rethinking what I said earlier about wage versus non-wage. Because I'm looking at the original bylaw and the list that I'd made. I'd taken the various sections of the bylaw and I mapped them out to each policy and procedure. And the list that's left in this bylaw and the draft are all non-compensation, non-salary. They don't include pay policies. Those were all sections in the existing bylaw. And some of them have policies and some of them don't. And I think my thinking in including the list was, actually, I don't remember, it was a while ago. So I think we could go either way, honestly. I think part of why I left them in was that it's less of a change from the existing bylaw. So they're still seeing these these areas that the personnel board had some sort of input into. And so if there's consistency between the prior, the existing and the new. So I'm not sure if that was answering the question or if I just made it muddier.
No, I think I think
Well,
it
this
did
is
help,
good.
Kate, because you were saying, you were referring, sorry, referring to the past one.
Right.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm gonna just type for a minute and you guys talk, okay? I'm
Okay,
gonna.
I mean, I personally think, based on Kate's observation, that we will, and if we're trying to ensure that we're able to do a good job of communicating to the citizens at town meeting, I think we should have the list in. Because I think not having a list will more likely than not raise questions that are going to be peripheral and not really germane to what we're trying to accomplish. So I think the list, and maybe there has to be some wordsmithing of the list, I think the list would actually help us and help communicate what our intent is with this new bylaw.
Let me know when you're done.
So anybody like to comment? All right, well, Pamela, are you,
My husband was just feeding the cat, so I shut my video off, but now I'm back on. I'm still here. He's still
Okay.
feeding the, didn't want to
so I-
disturb the feeding the cat.
so I think we're actually at a point of being able to decide, should we have a list or should we not have a list? I've given I guess, my opinion and my argument for why we should have
Yeah.
a list,
Okay, well,
which is sort of echoing, I think, Kate's position, but we need to get some input from Joe and Liz.
I'm comfortable with the list. I mean, we've been looking at it now since we've been drafting this, I think. Yeah, so it's important.
Okay.
okay.
So
Hey,
I've been to a
Kat is-
couple of school committee meetings lately where they had to explain that they have decades and decades of lack of transparency in their policies and procedures. And so in that case, I'm for the list because it does help us to transition the town. And then
Yeah.
hopefully what we'll be doing next is the handbook with the policies and procedures. And we can
Yeah.
take a real look at all of that's on this list that is stated as not to be updated through town meeting, and make sure that, that the work that Kate did to identify which one had a policy or procedures and which one didn't, we could then embellish that in the PPP and not maybe in another rendition we take it out. But right now it kind of shows that historical transition. So I'm for it too. I'll stop there.
Okay, so I'm going to,
I agree too, by the way.
okay. So I think I'm going to say that at this point, we have agreement that we're going to keep the list in. And that I still think there may be some wordsmithing that might be of help. And then Kate, you had a couple of points about 10 and or 11 and 12 as, or was that?
No, that was me. I think I just, the leave for temporary and limited status employees, that was somehow left off. I think I included it's one of the categories in the existing bylaw. So this list came from the very sections and I just included that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I think, do we have agreement that we've included that we have, well, the only thing that I want to make certain is Mark's, but Mark, why don't you go ahead?
I was just going to make the real nit of a comment that I think under 6, it's supposed to be vacation accrual, use, and payoff. Not
Yes.
sue and
Right.
payoff.
But that's been
Okay.
circled. Right, we got that.
I could, right.
Yeah.
Right. We
So I think the other point that I'm not sure we've taken care of at the moment is that we want to, and maybe we have in Liz's, is that we want to make certain that the town manager and the personnel board are in sync and are consulted with any of these types of changes. That it's no, there is no, we have no desire to have unilateral decision-making on the part of these non-wage provisions.
So do you want to use that clause I threw out earlier, which is upon the recommendation of the town manager and consistent with state law, blah, 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 blah?
Does that go in front of that last sentence?
It would
Sorry,
be, let me get back to it. What this was, I just had it up here. Wait a minute, I'm reading this on my phone. It would be, yeah, D, and it would be the last sentence. Because we go back and forth, we need the list, we don't need the list, and it seems like now we think we should keep the list, and there's really good parts that we should keep the list. And I had thrown out some cushion language earlier that I think we could put as a clause in front of that last sentence that says, upon the recommendation of the town manager, comma, and consistent with state law, comma, the personnel board. No, wait a minute, that's not right. The personnel board shall provide advice, shall advise and recommend the PPP. No, it should be, okay, because you don't want, the advice and recommendation is not consistent with state laws. The personnel board shall provide advice and recommendation to update the personnel policy and procedures on non-wage exemptions, including but not limited to the following. Then I put a comma, consistent with state, consistent as, what did I just say? As suggested, well, you need a verb, as verb by the town manager and consistent with state law, and then plunk. If you want that, it's cushion language and it's an escape hatch if you want it. And it addresses the point that we get out from under being accused of being unilateral.
What I'm going to suggest, Pamela and Liz, is let Pamela send you or send via Kimberly what her, write it down and
Yeah, I'll write
make
it down.
certain that we're all in sync with
Okay.
with the wording.
Yeah, I'll
Because
send
doing
it
it on
out
the phone
tonight.
like this is problematic.
It's hard
Okay,
too to be
all right.
reading off the phone and, everything.
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, so I've got a placeholder for just that, and I'll keep that in the notes and hear from you after, Pamela. That's great.
Yeah, I'll just tap it out after the meeting.
So
and
then-
send-
So then we go to E, and Kate, you had a couple comments, or you had one comment? Or maybe that's actually referring back up to, okay. No, but I think,
I think
Yeah,
it's that
B13.
language, shall develop and present instead of is responsible, right? To make it sound,
okay,
Correct.
is that
and-
okay? Yeah.
Yes, and I spelled present wrong, so sorry about that.
That's okay.
But other than that, yeah, that's what I meant.
Well, I put Sue in the document, so, right. All right.
all right, so we're I guess now to F. What I wanted to make clear is that we don't want, we can review job descriptions, or we can be part of the review process, but we don't want to have, we don't want to hold up the ability to hire somebody and have them come on to the employment of the town. And therefore, what we used to have to do was to have this long waiting period until the next town meeting so we don't want to have the town meeting have to be involved with this process.
Even now though, Bill, they're not held up. They're just, we use a summary article, right? To go over everything that we've done between town meetings. And it does are you saying you don't want it presented again to town meeting, or, because it doesn't, I'm confused, I guess, on what gets held up.
Well, I I think the town manager, in consultation with the personnel board, should be able to review job descriptions for new and existing positions without necessity of going to town meeting. And therefore that whole exercise of going back and looking what was done during the year and having that on the consent calendar, I don't think that's what we want.
Pamela,
We want the town manager to be able to in consultation with the personnel board, to be able to review whatever job descriptions are being presented and whatever classification. But we don't want town meeting. I don't think town meeting needs to be involved at all. Mark, you've got your hand
Mark?
up?
Yeah, again, I think this is a case where because this new bylaw doesn't say that revisions to the classification schedule have to be presented at the next town meeting, then you've essentially eliminated it by not including it in the new bylaw. But, again, I think at some point, town council or town labor council should go over the whole thing, and it should be highlighted that that's a change in the presentation of it, and it's meant to accomplish that efficiency of not having this sort of overhang of what happens if somehow town meeting, rejects a previously approved job description or position.
Right. Thank you.
Pamela, when you're typing, could you go on mute?
I'm sorry. I was just wanting to catch this. I didn't know that was coming out. Now you know I was cheating.
Yeah. So,
Um,
okay. So, but again, I think by not including the old process in the new bylaw, you're getting rid of that problem. But this section, at least my reading of it, is trying to establish the idea that in fact the job descriptions are still approved by the personnel board. They just don't have to go to town meeting anymore.
Right. In my mind, that's the key. And we need to make certain that we're all comfortable with the language that we're using. We accomplish that goal.
Yeah, and I think actually, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think this section only refers to job descriptions because job classifications, and that's the class and comp plan, that's still going, but job descriptions, if we think about it, have never actually gone to town meeting. So that's okay too.
Good point. Yeah, no, that's
but each one that changes is being fit into the new CNC,
Yes.
right? And
Right.
I guess the opposite question for me is why did it ever go? But it seems like every single year, that's the article that goes forward, is a summary report on changes that have been made, which includes the job descriptions. Maybe I'm making it all too general.
Yeah, it doesn't include the job descriptions. It only includes the classification. So,
Okay.
the job description for a system operator, or whatever that job is, doesn't appear, but the classification of a system operator in a certain place in the class and comp schedule does appear. So if it was going from whatever one level to another level, that change appears, but the description does not appear.
we're really
Okay.
talking, I think, the title appears. The
Yes.
title, not the there has to be a relationship between title and classification.
Yeah.
But all right, I think we can we go on to the very last paragraph. And I think we've got the few. Anyone want to comment? I can't see who. Oh, Kate, you might have had I think you have an opinion about whether we should even include that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we discussed this last week. I mean, I think, so where I was coming from is I feel why the personnel board and no other boards and committees, and I guess my concern is that it opens the door to other boards and committees to then also want to change. I mean, not all of them have bylaws, but if they do, and then be part of that process, of providing input to the select board for annual evaluations. And then the other piece of that was that we discussed is that, you know, the personnel board, I feel, sees just a small sliver of what the town manager and the HR director and all of the department heads do in terms of personnel management, because, you know, the town managers up here, HR directors sort of working with all the department heads across the organization, and then personnel management goes down. So I'm not sure how much this board could really even provide input. And I'm not sure, you know, we're not elected, we're appointed, versus the select board who's elected by, you know, residents, by the citizens. So it's just a different take on it. And I wasn't, I guess, I didn't recommend it for inclusion. I could see adding it to the charge, in the same event that we're trying to kind of make our bylaw be a little more broadly worded. I think that this, you know, I could see that moving into the charge, but not the bylaw.
All right, good presentation there. Mark, I'm going to ask you, because I think this was you were endorsing this last paragraph, and perhaps maybe you might want to speak to your rationale for why it should be there.
So I think Kate makes good points, and I'm perfectly happy with whichever way you guys decide to go. I do think that there's value in promoting a dialogue between the select board and the personnel board around this point. And I think that it's an area that the select board itself should generally stay out of, and that the personnel board gets to be the subject matter expert. So to the extent that the select board ever touches it, it ought to come through the higher level of engagement with these issues that the personnel board has, just and allowing the select board to act more in sort of an executive and broad policy making, and balancing off the needs of, you know, the roads program versus the salary plan or something like that. So that's my thinking. I'm persuaded that it might be a good idea to try it out in the charge and see whether that works. I will say that my sense is that it can work either way, but my intent was to try to promote some dialogue around how successfully we are administering our personnel management system on behalf of the employee stakeholders on the policy side between the boards. And it's not meant to be, even though it reads as an evaluation of the town manager, that's not the main point. The main point is to try and make sure that we're having a more fulsome policy discussion about how we're doing as an employer from the citizen side of things. And that's my hope for this, however you decide to dispose of it.
So
All right,
I have
thank
a
you.
couple of
Liz?
comments. Yeah, so I think it's reasonable to put it in the charge. I also think it's reasonable for the select board to request this of the personnel board, something like this, right? But you know, if we do have it in the bylaw, then you know, the idea is that any change to that, any nuance would have to go back to town meeting, and that's not what we're talking about. And then Mark, you said something right at the end. I thought, wait a minute, now it has to go in the charge, and that is that what was it? Something about with successful administration of the employee policies, which isn't as explicit as an evaluation of the town manager, right? It's really a bit different, in fact. And it could roll into how is the town doing, and the town manager is the final point of responsibility. But I do think then when you mentioned it in that way, I thought, okay, yeah, now I see why it has to be in the charge, because it could become quite formulaic or formalistic if we have an evaluation of the town manager related to these issues that's in the bylaw. So that flexibility, I think, could come if we put it in the charge instead. And I'm all for this because my sense was the select board is represented here by you, Mark. And it was your suggestion. So since you oversee
but
us, you
it's
should take
also
what you say.
important. It's also important to recognize though that I'm just one voice on the select board and the select board has not actually discussed this. If we decide to put it in a charge at some point, the select board will have a chance to wordsmith the charge and we'll get the result of that dialogue, whatever it is, of which it, could turn out that I'm a minority opinion. Hopefully not.
All right, I think, this is really, really good discussion. I'm in favor of putting it in the charge, and I think Kate and Liz concurred. I haven't heard from Joe and Pamela. Your opinion about should this be put in the charge and taken out of the bylaw draft?
Oh, Pamela, sorry, you're now on mute. That's my fault.
You're on mute. No, she's on mute.
No, I said
There.
I hadn't really thought about it. I actually don't even know what a charge is, but I'm persuaded by the arguments I heard, so I would support that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Joe?
Yeah, as we discussed last week, I think the form, I believe.
Joe, you're disappearing a bit.
Well, I was having it with my computer volume today. Can you hear me? I'm like yelling.
Now we can.
All right. So I'm definitely supportive of the concept which we talked about in our last meeting. And I'll defer to the experts here that similarly to Pam,
Right.
it's a good
Yeah.
spot in the charts, and I don't think that makes sense. But
Okay.
if we looped it all together, I would have concerns. If for some reason it doesn't get into the chart, I think we should revisit it as part of the bylaw. So that would be my opinion.
So
So,
could I
Joe,
say in conclusion,
know if
Joe,
that
it
timing
needs to be
works
in
out.
one of them.
Yes, that would be my preferences. I think this concept is important because well-rounded feedback for the town manager, to me, as kind of an HR professional, is one of the most important things. So it's not meant to criticize or, be punitive in nature, but more helpful and productive, so that if there are, opportunities for the town to consider or be different under the town manager to think about, we have that opportunity to provide that feedback. And otherwise, it may not happen.
all right. I think at this point, I'm going to say we have a consensus on removing it from the bylaw and putting it into the charge. Any objection? I don't see any. Okay. So that's what we will do. So we're
right.
now having gone through all of our thoughts and comments. And Pamela is going to send to Liz the language in a text or email on that. Sort of the next discussion is really, where do we go from here? What are your thoughts? We don't really have any final draft tonight to vote upon. We have, I think, in principle, we've agreed that what we've been working on, we're comfortable with and we're willing to support going forward. But we don't have any final written document that represents the thinking and represents what our various conclusions are with respect to a new personnel bylaw.
Do I send that language to just Liz or to the whole group?
Just send it to Liz.
Okay.
So, Bill, I think your worry there is the timing toward getting to the
Yes.
select board and getting us an article drafted. I think if there are minor changes to a bylaw draft going forward, we can finagle that through December and then get it a final to the town moderator in early January. I think that's okay, which does allow us, perhaps the right thing to do then is I'll get Pamela's comments. I will revise as of this discussion, and I can send it then to Kimberly
Yes.
as a complete, and then we'll have Kimberly send it out. And I think we can have, is that right? That we can have a consensus or a vote that's just by email for a version like this? Is that correct? Or we can't? No. Ever hopeful I am, but
I think you're if I may, I think you're close enough that you could do the changes that you're talking about, watermark the document draft, and begin
Okay.
to circulate it for the purpose of, for
Perfect.
example, the town meeting coordination meeting on December 2nd. If you showed up with this and said, this is the draft of the personnel bylaw that we're considering submitting, and then, by whatever the deadline is for submitting a final article, you could have another meeting and finalize it. I would certainly be comfortable circulating this amongst the select board, as part of an update that says this is where the personnel bylaw looks like it's going. I think it's certainly worthy of being used as a notification element, even if you haven't actually voted it as final, because it does strike me that you're largely in agreement about what direction this is taking.
Just, I have a public
Okay,
records
good.
question. I don't want to step on any landmines. So I'll send Liz this paragraph tonight, and then tomorrow, if she has a question or I didn't understand what I'm supposed to do, and she wants to communicate with me by email, between the two of us, that's fine, right? It is a public record, but it's not tripping any public meeting.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to, there's always gadflies out there that are looking to trip you up on every little bureaucratic thing. Okay, good.
All
All
right.
right.
So I think we've completed a really major piece of a goal. I think we had for this year, and I really do appreciate everybody's input. And Kimberly, you've been a star in being able to help us and getting things put
Great.
together. It's really, and obviously Mark's involvement has been really key and for us to get to this point. So if I understand correctly, Kimberly will be leaving maybe tomorrow afternoon, heading back to Florida. And I think I want to personally, as a co-chair, say, we've really, really enjoyed our association, and we feel very strongly that you have contributed greatly and have been able to navigate the town and employees and the management and so forth. I think we couldn't have had somebody better. So all I could do is I wish you, and I'm sure we all wish you well as you further your career. And I know you're going to be still involved on a consultation basis and maybe even Zoom, but this will be the last time we'll actually see you. So thank you.
Have a nice Thanksgiving in Florida and everyone.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
thank
You've
you.
been-
Thank you, Bill.
Thank
It's
you
been
for
my
your
pleasure.
service to the town.
It's been my pleasure to serve you all, and I look forward to, I'm sure that the projects that I'm working on will be before you in the future. So we'll see each other again.
Great.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm gonna.
So our next meeting is going to be December, what is it? December 8th?
13th.
December 13th. That's a Wednesday, right? I don't have a calendar in front of me.
Checking.
So.
Can I ask a
I think we're
question?
set. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Bill. We had talked, I think, last time about somehow bringing the personal study task force involved in the bylaw process, or just to have them review and give us some feedback. Did we still want to do that? When were we going to do that?
So I think if we could bring them to the December 13 meeting, that we'd still be before the final warrant. So if there's really serious issue, we could address it in time. And I apologize. That's one thing I think I had on my to-do list, and I haven't gotten in touch with folks from that group yet. But I will put on that again in my list, and we'll invite them to the December 13 meeting. Okay. And if if a draft is circulating, then I assume that it would be okay if I sent them the draft as well. Any conflicts or concerns if I do that?
That's a good question, Mark.
It's in our packet, so it's a public document at this
Yeah.
point.
Great.
You
Let's go
can
to the website.
do that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I'm gonna sign off and do paragraph D, then I have my dinner. Okay,
So I think we're gonna entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a
moved.
motion that we adjourn.
Okay, thank you, Liz. And then a second, I saw Joe's hand. So all
Yeah.
in favor?
I,
Aye.
Hi.
Joe,
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Pamela.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
especially
Thanksgiving.
Kimberly.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Kimberly. Ciao.